I'm Larry Brame. I'm the chairman of the board for City Club. And as most of you already know, City Club is a nonprofit corporation established for the express purpose of, and here's where I quote from our bylaws, bringing the people of our community together to inspire and inform them on issues vital to all of us. And we are entirely self-supporting. That's not in the bylaws. That just happens to be a reality. And as such, we listen to our speakers and learn from our speakers and engage in discussions and the free exchange of thoughts and ideas. And for those of you attending for the first time, our program format has us listening to the speakers. Then we take a 10-minute break, and each table comes up with a common question and one person to ask that question. Quickly get around with our roving mics to each table, ask that table's question, and then if there's time at the end, we'll take individual questions as well. And we will adjourn promptly at 1 p.m. That's why we're starting early. As I said before, we're completely self-supporting, and as such are very grateful for the contributions we receive from our members and our sponsors. We are fortunate to have 18 corporate sponsors, and our newest sponsor is First Montana Bank. So their president couldn't make it, but Ashley Keene, would you please stand up? This is the Vice President of Marketing. Oh, and remain standing. I told you, you might get a round of applause. Now, I want you to hold your round of applause for the other 17, because I'm going to name them. And as I name your company as a sponsor, and you're related to it, please stand up too. So, begin. I have to find that list, huh? Sorry, John. Always that list. Okay. So, at our highest sponsorship level, the ambassador sponsors are the City of Missoula. Any city people here? Please stand up. The University of Montana. Any Montana University people here? Please stand up. Okay. Darn, this can take forever. I won't do it. If you hear your name and you don't want to stand up, that's okay. Cedar Mountain Software, the Missoula Independent Newspaper, the Missoula Downtown Association, Blackfoot Telecommunications, and KECI-TV, NBC Montana. Our next highest level of sponsorship are the sponsorship leaders, Garlington Lawn and Robinson Attorneys at Law, Missoula Federal Credit Union, Northwestern Energy, and Missoula County. County reps here? Yes, we have one. Our sponsorship supporters are the WGM Group, the Bjornson Law Offices, Morrison Meyerly Engineers, the Art Missoula Nonprofit, the United Way of Missoula County, and Poteet Construction Company, and thanks to all of you. Okay, we also have a great board of trustees, and we just had an election. I'd like to recognize our new chairman, but he's in St. Louis. That's Jim Royan with the Wells Fargo Advisors Group. And our newly elected vice chairman is Heidi Sterrett. Are you going to stand up? Oh, okay. With Missoula Broadcasting Company. Our secretary. Who's our secretary? Denise Mongrain Moore with First Montana Bank, and our treasurer is Robert Giblin with the Missoula Downtown Partnership. Our business manager is Jessica Allred with Missoula Food Bank, and she's probably still out at the front table. Our other rounding out our board are Peggy Coor, former Vice President. Peggy, she's over there. Susan Hay Patrick with the Missoula United Way of Missoula County. Brett Rosenberg with Treeline Strategy. He's a LEED certified kind of guy. Brandon Nas with Missoula Federal Credit Union. He's back there. And I think I forgot somebody. Who'd I forget? Didn't add up. Oh, me. Sorry about that. forgetful. This is my last time up here, so you guys won't have to deal with this again. That's the business portion. I was going to introduce representatives of the ownership here, but I don't think they made it. The All Reds are managing. But I do have another social thing. I'd like to recognize Jeff Badnock, who got me into this 5-6 years ago. Stand up, Jeff. Yeah, we had two other vice chairmen that were supposed to be chairman. One got pregnant and the other left town. So I got the job. That's the truth. So with the social stuff out of the way, Peggy, would you get real? And please introduce the real people here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, time out. Gee, many Christmas. Yeah, we need to know what's going to happen next month, don't we? Yes. The enigma of growth in Missoula, balancing quality of life, economic development, and affordable housing within a mountain valley. Missoula's quality of life, in large, stems from our setting in a beautiful mountain valley. The community is continuing to grow. The interactive presentation, led by Nick Kaufman and Jeremy Keene of WGM Group, will challenge the audience to participate in the discussion as it relates to the quality of life and growth. With that, next month.
Thanks, Larry. We have a slight deviation from the schedule. I'm going to call on Susan Hay-Patrick just for a quick minute.
So what Larry didn't tell you is that he has stepped down as, we call him the president, he calls himself the chair, and I guess that's what the bylaws say. But Larry has been our tireless and enthusiastic leader, joining the board in 2011 and serving as president since 2012. And if you've come to City Club forums, you must know of Larry's unique, funny, unscripted approach. And he's just been a delight. I didn't say off the wall. He has often righted our sometimes leaky ship. And above all, he is a lover of Missoula, of our community, and of City Club. So we have a little parting gift that is presented to Larry in recognition of your tireless dedication to City Club Missoula and with gratitude for your enthusiastic leadership. So thank you, Larry.
Some of you already know that when I got this and found out I was chairman, I stopped acting presidential and started acting, well, chairmanly or chairmanic.
So it's my great pleasure now to introduce the moderator for our forum today, and that is Kathy Best. She is the editor of the Missoulian and the Ravalli Republic. She moved to Missoula and took over that position in the summer, this past summer. She comes to Missoula from a long, varied, and distinguished, I must say, career in journalism. She does come from a journalism family, a newspaper family, but she started really at the Quad City Times in Illinois as a reporter, moved on through a number of roles and at a number of other notable newspapers, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, the Baltimore Sun, and then the Seattle Times. And at the Times, she was managing editor and then was named editor and vice president of news. During her time as an editor at the Seattle Times, that newspaper won not one, not two, but 3 Pulitzer Prizes. We're honored to have her here today and serve as moderator. Please welcome Kathy Best.
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here today, and I am going to introduce everybody at the head table at once, and I'm going to try and keep it as tight as I can because they're not strangers to you, I hope, and because we want to have as much time as possible for them to talk about the state of the places they oversee, and then get to discussion from you. So, with that said, we're going to go down the table this way. To my right is Missoula County Commission Chair Jean Curtis. as you probably know, but I just found out, Jean got into politics through the PTA and has been on the commission for 3 terms now. She's a Missoula County native. She grew up in Seeley Lake and graduated from Seeley Swan High School. She attended St. Patrick's School of Nursing and the University of Montana. She was elected to her first term on the commission in November 2000 and reelected in 2006 and 2012. In this age of government as the enemy, Jean is not one of those people. She believes that government can and should be reasonable, sensible, and responsible. I think we have to send her to Washington. And she works to ensure that local government is accessible to the citizens of Missoula County. So, next to Jean is Sheila Stearns, who is the first woman president of the University of Montana. And it's not like she wasn't totally qualified for that. She's done pretty much everything there is to do in higher education in Montana and in other states. She's the 18th president of the University of Montana, and as you know, she was asked to take over in December when Royce Engstrom stepped down. Prior to becoming president, she was vice president of the University of Montana, chancellor of the University of Montana Western, president of Wayne State College in Nebraska, and commissioner of higher education for Montana. She's a highly respected advocate for educational opportunity, and from talking to friends and others at the University of Montana, a steadying, trusted influence at a time of change for the university. She has a bachelor's degree in history, a master's in history, and a doctorate in educational administration and supervision, all from the University of Montana. And then last but not least is Missoula's 50th mayor, and as some people say, mayor for life. He is running again, John Engen. And John, one of the things that I enjoyed learning about you is that you had a very checkered past, that he did time at the Missoulian as both a columnist and a copy editor, and he actually won some awards doing it. But he also did some other stuff. He was a city council member. He owned and operated his own small business and volunteered for a variety of Missoula's nonprofit organizations concentrating on human resources. I realize as I'm looking at this that your staff sent me an updated bio and I forgot to bring it. So the things that I remember reading among his accomplishments as mayor is bringing ownership of mountain water back to Missoula, reaching out and making people throughout the city feel like they have a voice and that they have a sense of ownership in the direction that Missoula is going. And I know there's a bunch of other stuff, and I'm forgetting it right now, but you know him. So there we go. I'm going to turn it over to Jean, and then we'll move it down the table. And then once they're done, I'll go over the rules about the table talk that happens, and off we go.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your lunch break with us today. It's always great to speak to our very engaged community members to tell you what's going on in Missoula County. I'm honored to represent my fellow commissioners, Cola Rowley and Dave Strohmeyer. I think they're back in the corner over there. People politely refer to me as the senior commissioner, but I'm just really old now. It's great to have Cola and Dave on the team with their new ideas and fresh energy. We also work closely with all the elected officials in Missoula County on your behalf. Each year, when the Commission asks departments to submit a list of what they feel are important accomplishments, identify upcoming projects and challenges, I am just amazed to see all that they do for all of us. It's challenging to pick out just a few to talk with you today. so that you can get a flavor of not just what we do, but why we do it. Everything that government does at the city level, the county level, at the university, and our public schools really came about because people said, we have this issue or this problem, or there's this opportunity to make something better, and we all need to come together and make a difference. Much of the important work we do on a day-to-day basis is almost invisible, but if we weren't there to provide that service, someone would come forth and say, we need to do this, and we think the county should help. There are 56 counties in Montana, each delivering services at the grassroots level, and we're really charged with three things: protecting the public health, the public safety, and the general welfare of our citizens. We have about 800 employees in Missoula County, spread over 30 departments, that do everything from pick up your lost dog and keep him safe at the shelter until you can come pick him up, to plowing and sanding the roads so that your children can ride safely when the bus comes. It's a big job in the county the size of the whole state of Delaware, where it takes 2 hours to drive from the Lake County line near Condon, where I grew up, to the Valley County line near Florence, but we love it. We invest your tax dollars back into your community and make a difference for the people who live here. We invest in the public health of our community by helping young families establish lifelong healthy habits through classes and support. Healthy lifestyles can prevent chronic disease like diabetes and heart disease, and they have measurable economic impacts. These investments pay off. We all think of the sheriff's department, the police, and our detention center when we say public safety, and they are key to having safe communities, but there's so much more. Working collaboratively with the city and the university, we have leveraged significant funding to support services for victims of sexual and domestic violence and other violent crimes. The trauma of being a victim can span generations. However, when victims get the services that they need, they can transform from victims to survivors. In 2016, our Crime Victim Advocates program helped nearly 2,000 victims of crime find support, safety, and hope. Providing safety can start with a phone call. No matter where you are in Missoula County, when you dial 911, your call will be answered by our Missoula County Dispatch Center. Last January, we had a hunter who was lost up Twin Creeks, out near Potomac. In September, 2 more hunters were lost around Seeley Lake. In both situations, the cell phone service was too weak to call 911, but they were able to text our 911 center to have their location identified and the resources dispatched. This technology saves lives. The ability to receive and process 911 calls, dispatch an appropriate resource quickly in an emergency, and coordinate with the emergency responders, many who are volunteers in our rural areas, takes a high level of dedication, training, and commitment to public safety. The 911 service is the backbone of public safety and cannot fail. Having equipment that's not only reliable but redundant is an expensive and critical investment that counties make to ensure public safety. We're already planning for future improvements to this critical infrastructure, but we know additional investments will need to be made. Planning for future investments is also among the top priorities for our elections office. 2016 was an election-filled year. There were school elections, special district elections, the federal primary, and of course the general election in November. Our elections administrator, Rebecca Connors, responds to our community and exceeds their expectations. The elections office recruited and trained nearly 800 election judges in 2016. The procedures, the election laws, and the equipment are complex and therefore require significant training and oversight to ensure a secure system and to make sure that your votes are counted. I worked as a polling place manager for both the primary and general elections at the Hellgate Elementary School, which is one of our larger polling places, with 40 trained election workers helping that day, and all were needed. Voting technology is changing, and we need to be able to keep pace. Our machines, 1990s technology, are nearing the end of their useful life, and we must figure out how we're going to replace this necessary equipment. We currently have 28 polling places across across the county, more than any other county in Montana. Replacing ADA voting equipment is estimated to cost about $140,000. To replace the precinct tabulators at the polling places will cost about $552,000 for all 28 polling places. We know it's a large figure and a big burden to the taxpayers. We will continue to engage with all of you to help us identify ways to reduce costs. We will have to revisit how many polling places we have. The cost of new equipment and the reality of how many election workers are needed and available will force us to be more strategic in our budgeting decisions. We know this is an investment that we need to make. Missoula County also established an election advisory committee with a diverse representation of Missoula County's 82,000 registered voters. This committee serves as the public liaison between the registered voters, the commissioners, and the elections office to make sure the voter preferences are being implemented. They bring ideas to address changes in voting behavior. For example, in this past election, 72% of the ballots were cast by absentee, compared with 31% just 8 years ago. They tirelessly ensure transparent, trustworthy elections, and I would personally like to thank them for their work. I know Jeff's here, there's probably others. As we look at budgets for this special election coming up that was not budgeted for, and to replace aging voting equipment, please be part of the conversation. I invite you to join Rebecca, the commissioners, and the Election Advisory Committee in those discussions. Discussions to fund critical improvements and meet basic functions go beyond 911 and elections. Our Public Works Department stretches their budgets every year. Their work is funded by the county road tax, not the general fund. So only properties outside the city limits pay this tax. These are the folks who plow your roads, maintain the bridges, grade the roadways, and provide dust abatement. Think about the visual I mentioned earlier. Missoula County is the size of the state of Delaware. We have about 1,500 miles of county roads. We maintain about 450 miles. Half of them are paved, half of them are gravel. These are the services our residents expect. And trust me, people care about their roads. Folks want more done for their roads than we can budget for without raising taxes. I think the mayor knows this too. And although many in our community may not have an in-depth understanding of county government, what is important is that we're always here to provide the services you count on, whether it's finding room in tight budgets, helping you file your marriage license, register your vehicle, or help in crisis. County government's where the rubber meets the road in helping our constituents. We make investments in our community to make sure Missoula County residents are well represented and have what they need to thrive. We also support the Missoula City County Library, the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula, our County Record Center, and the Western Montana Fairgrounds. These are the fun resources our community continues to take advantage of. The Fairgrounds had a great 2016. They had higher attendance at all kinds of events and during the week of the fair more than we've seen in years. We also recently hired Emily Bentley as the Director of Fairgrounds Development. Is Emily here? She's working. And we hired her to implement our recently adopted plans for the grounds. To say that she has hit the ground running is really an understatement. She's reaching out to community partners to guide us through the implementation and beyond. I'm sure many of you here can expect a call from her soon. So we invest your tax dollars back into the community. That's why we need you to provide input on how we're doing. So having that transparent, seamless transition amongst the services means that the community doesn't always know we're here working on their behalf. But your county government is here to serve you. If you have questions, if you're unsure about a process, upset that something's not functioning like you think it should, get involved. Local government is designed to be hyper-responsive to our citizens. Our job is to listen to your concerns, questions, or excitement about an idea. I'm proud of the people I work with and the people I work for. A participatory government is the best way we can ensure we have that diverse voice at the table. So call us, email, volunteer for a board, ask a question on social media. We're doing whatever we can to have accessible platforms for you to engage with. We've switched our public meeting day and time to Thursdays at 2 so that we can be live on MCAT, because we didn't want to compete with the city already has a whole bunch of great committee meetings on Wednesday. If you don't see something you're looking for, reach out to us. We're happy to get you what you need. I'm proud to be your commissioner and enjoy coming to work every day to serve you. I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. She introduced me, but again, I'm Sheila Stearns, president for this year of the University of Montana, and delighted to be here and to be with you. I do want to extend some thank yous. First of all, to City Club. I know this is an annual event and a terrific one. Thank you for that. Larry, I would like to extend on behalf of all of us our thank you to your leadership for all these years. It has been, I know, a labor of love and really a great service to provide this kind of conversational forum for the university. And finally, I do want to acknowledge my university colleagues. I glance over the tables. I see several of you here, and I know how critical each of you is to the great functioning of the university. One of the things I just have to say about Missoula before I go any further, and Paul has heard me mention this, and it's just fun to say it again. You know, you see those bumper stickers, keep Missoula weird, and I think I might make one that says keep Missoula in bright colors, and let me tell you why. The most fun experience that I've had as your new president was just maybe 2 weeks into it, just buying something at the South Avenue Market on the corner of Higgins and South, and a clerk, it was early in the morning, and so I was perhaps particularly susceptible to flattery. And he said, "Ma'am, I really like your hair." And I was just, "Oh, that's nice." And he said, he paused and he said, "Except it really needs some burgundy tips." So I keep Missoula in color. And I thought, huh. And I said, well, that might be a good idea. I said, you know, our school colors are burgundy and silver. And he looked blank. And then I realized I'm probably not a student at the university. So I said, well, you may not know, but I am the president of the University of Montana. So burgundy, that's a good idea. And he paused and he looked at me and he said, you're the president of the University of Montana? And I said, yes. And he used an adjective I won't use here, but he did say, that's awesome. So I like to think it is too, and I'm enjoying it. Our title today, your title, is, as a state of the community writ large, is Unique Challenges and Shared Successes. And certainly the University of Montana feels that without being part of this group of people and this place with all this potential, we would not be the great university that we have been for 124 years. And we're looking forward, as I'll mention again in a moment, to our 125th celebration next year, and we want all of you to come for that celebration. In brief, I will say that after 2 months on the job, of course I'm an expert, but I really do believe that the state of the university is solid, it is strong, and it is strategic. And I will elaborate on each of those points, because contrary to perceptions that can gather more momentum, I believe those are absolutely accurate adjectives, and so I will explain. A moment ago, you heard Commissioner Curtis say, and I had to quick write it down, various factors, she said, quote, this is just about 3 minutes ago, will force us to be more strategic in our budgeting decisions. Ditto. It is nothing new in our organization or anyone else's. Next slide, Paula, is our key challenges and opportunities to be solid, strong, and strategic is that we will deal and analyze our potential in the areas of enrollment, budget alignment, our program prioritization, and our strategic plan. And my very last slide will show some of a pictograph of what many of you have contributed in our strategic planning process this year. We started as a, really, I consider just a brilliant gift from President Engstrom, a strategic planning group and process last summer, and many of you have been interviewed as part of that. That group has interviewed or had between 4,000 to 5,000 points of engagement on campus and within the community. So we are truly taking the measure of our place and our people and our connections to our city and county and our geography so that we can be even more solid and strong. It will create change. Change, some people say, is something that only babies like. But change is dynamic and reflects organizations that are continuously renewing themselves. That's what we are doing. We will be doing program prioritization in our academic programs and our administrative services. No area of the campus will be exempt from thorough review. And I submit this is a great opportunity, not something to be feared. We will move forward into 125, our 125th year, with perhaps one of the hardest years we will have ever had, because change, although it's essential and it will make us stronger, is not easy. We know that. But just think, a year from now, we will have a new president, and we will have a renewed organization. We will have a solid and stable budget. And I'm confident of that, and I know that it's important to our partners in the city, in the county, and particularly to our business and corporate partners, the 1,900 members of the chamber, all of whom say, whenever they see us, how can we help? Because all organizations go through times and moments of challenges, and we are there. And I think it's to be welcomed and used as a launch pad to go forward and not something to be feared and duck away from. The interconnected efforts that we have on campus are reflected here. I'll grant you, it looks a little bit like Olympic rings, but it does already, people are telling me, need to be modified, and it does, because really the foundation of a university is shared governance. It's not just one of the rings. And then we'll redo this, but the fact is we have the pieces in place to fill out the puzzle and to make sure that our redesign, our renewal, is really well organized and strategic for the coming year. This is, as luck, I think luck would have it, our 7th year, where every 7 years you get a visit from your major university-wide accrediting agency. That's this spring. They'll probably be calling you, Mayor. I hope you say all good things. They might be calling you, Madam Commissioner. I'm confident you will, because you know that a legacy university such as ours for 124 years is strong and so interconnected and interwoven to the community that we know we have your support. We will pursue enrollment initiatives such as stabilizing the incoming class, and then in the year after that, increasing it. The initiatives, the very data-informed strategic initiatives we're putting in place take time to implement. If you, like me, have a relative who did not get a postcard or an email when some other university contacted them, yes, we know about that. My granddaughter, Elise Stearns, told me about that. And we know exactly why and how that happens. You will not be surprised to know that that's connected to resources and investments. And that's why I insist that we will be moving forward more strategically and making changes that enable us to invest in the kinds of recruitment initiatives that will not only stabilize the incoming class, but will gradually increase the numbers of students overall, including graduate students, including non-resident students, and continuing our growth at Missoula College. And whoa, is anybody else excited to see that? Shannon, where are you? To see the new building open in a few months. We are just beyond thrilled. And to expand international recruitment. We are positioning ourselves to make growth in that area over the next 3 to 4 years. Not all of this happens in 1 year. In terms of short-term response to budget alignment that we need to do, one of the things is we must and we will reduce the percentage of our budgets devoted to personnel and the related benefits that is over 80%. We'll be getting down maybe to 79%, 78%, and gradually getting that percentage into the right framework and benchmark so that we can invest in properly and strategically in recruitment, in information technology, in the study abroad opportunities and scholarships and waivers for students. We will do some other initiatives this year, 2017. Very, very careful watch on any new hires. We will look at creative retirement incentives with the advice of our employees who have lots of years of service and some interest in perhaps stepping out of the workforce. And finally, streamlining services in a number of areas. I'm issuing a series of challenges fairly soon to help that happen. Nearing the close, our job is to prepare the next generation. Some members of that generation we know are non-traditional students. They're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're getting master's degrees, and they're lifelong learners. So it's actually preparing our entire university to serve lifelong learners and to achieve, I'm just going to stop on this one at the first bullet, a higher percentage of students who graduate in 4 years. And by the way, the real caveat there is it's only if we can make sure they have sufficient financial aid. The reason that the most selective universities in the country have 90% plus 4-year graduation rates is because they either have sufficient financial aid or mom and dad pay the bill, the entire bill. For students who pay a lot of their own way, work in the summers, 2 or 3 jobs, they make very conscious and frankly wise decisions to stop out, and that sometimes results in 5 or 6 year graduation rates. That is not always a failure by a university or a student, it is wise planning. And finally, I said I would get back to our strategic planners and to show you just a pictograph that Paula helped put together and the strategic planning put together of the emerging themes that we're seeing. Improved relationships with alumni, being more vocal about what we do best, teamwork, outward looking, tell the UM story, technology and technological advancement, more jobs to keep students in the state. But by the way, across the state, including at the university, we've begun to reverse that trend in the last few years. More students, net college graduates, coming in or staying than leaving. It's a topic for another really interesting conversation to be filled with pride. And finally, to maintain our alliances with you in the city and the county and the business leaders and civic leaders of the city and county of Missoula. So with that, let me see, Hal gave me a timer. Oops, I'm a little over. That cut into your time, Mayor Engen. I'm so sorry about that. But I will pass this down.
Well, thank you very much, President Stearns. I appreciate that. You should know, in terms of frugality, Mr. Stearns, the first man, has provided said timepiece. It is not a Rolex. Instead, it appears to be a Casio from a '02. Yeah, from Shopko. Okay, good. So, so apparently we're working our magic there. So ladies and gentlemen, a couple of quick housekeeping things. My PowerPoint today is we have endeavored in a new project at the City of Missoula. We're taking photographs of every pothole we fill. The next 7 hours will be photographs of those potholes. Can we roll that footage? A couple of other quick notes. I want to personally thank Kathy Best and the good folks here at City Club. So City Club a long time ago was founded on the notion of civil discourse and has been a model of that for these many years, and the Missoulian just made a choice that I think has been a long time coming with regard to improving civil discourse, and that's cutting those comments out, for crying out loud. A very long time ago, for my emotional health, I stopped reading them, but it didn't stop other people from reading them and telling me what they said. So now it's just a lot easier. With regard to the mayor for life thing, to some of you, I'm sure it feels that way. I hope that it does not. For me, it feels like the privilege of a lifetime. Serving this community has been a joy and continues to be a joy, and I thank you for the opportunity to chat a little bit about what we're doing today. I don't spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good, but sometimes we look back to remind ourselves what we've done together and what we've accomplished, and sometimes the perspective of time is enormously helpful. So it wasn't too many years ago that I stood in front of a similar audience in a similar hall talking about challenges, problems, really, crises, really, in our community, and the crisis of that particular time was sexual assault in the city of Missoula and at the University of Montana. And while that was an extraordinarily difficult time, it also is, I think, now in retrospect, something to celebrate. We went from being a place where those investigations were challenging at best, and in some cases incomplete, where victims didn't feel comfortable coming forward, where folks didn't feel safe or protected, and where we could have done a much better job for the people we serve. And through that process and through working together, we managed to improve the way we investigate crime. We managed to improve the way we treat victims of sexual assault so that we ensure that they're not victims again and again as a function of our system. And we've done that with the University of Montana, and we did that with Missoula County. And today I would argue that the city of Missoula, Missoula County, and the University of Montana are examples for the rest of the United States about how to manage that piece of business under difficult circumstances, and you all should be proud of the folks who serve our communities to make that much better. Another great example of the way we work together is if you happen to look on the hillsides around Missoula these days, you'll find some homes, but not as many as we might see were it not for the fact that Missoula County, the University of Montana, and the city of Missoula have worked together these many years to invest in our open spaces. And one of the things that makes this community great is the fact that you can step out your door almost anywhere in Missoula and within 20 minutes or a half an hour, depending on your mode of transportation, be someplace where no one else is at the moment and enjoy wide open spaces that are rare and natural and wonderful and well worth preservation. And that's because we together a long time ago began that investment and that strategy. When we talk about strategy, What I think we're talking about is intent. Are we being intentional about the way we engage in taking care of our community? Are we planning appropriately for the future? Are we considering what will happen in 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years from now? I don't know who was kicking the tires on day one at the University of Montana. Sheila, you'll know. Hal, you'll certainly know. Oscar Craig. Yeah, Hal actually knew Oscar. And no, sorry, Hal. I suspect that that immediately it wasn't a notion that 125 years from now somebody would be sitting at the DoubleTree, which didn't exist, on Salish lands, talking about the last 125 years at the University of Montana. But the fact of the matter is that that was an intentional act. Founding the university, founding the city of Missoula was an intentional act. Creating Missoula County as a function of making a place and creating governance was an intentional act. And as we move forward, we have to be intentional about all sorts of things. So we were intentional at the city of Missoula when we thought about the notion that our water company was going to get bought and sold and bought and sold. So we decided that we needed to buy it. And we proceeded to engage in activities that got us there one way or another. And as we talk about now today, we just received another ruling before I walked into this room from Judge Townsend that said the folks who bought our water system, sold our water system, tried to keep our water system, were overcharging you all for legal services and fees to the tune of 40 and 30 and more %. And that is a good ruling for us. And just a reminder that these folks don't have our best interests at heart. And the people who have our best interests at heart sit in this room, pay taxes, vote, and take care of one another. And that's what owning this water system is about, is taking care of one another. As we look around the room, we think how we got here and what matters to us in our lives. We want to matter in some way. All of us fundamentally wants to matter in some way. And so when I wake up in the morning and I come to work at the city of Missoula, my whole notion is this: how can I make a life better? Some days I'm better at that than others, and I never do it alone. But fundamentally, we're all about making lives better, right? So how can we be more intentional about that? How can we think about that in more meaningful ways? And so as we cooperate with the University of Montana in strategic planning, for example, we look and we think and we contemplate what it is to lift a person up, what it is to give a person an opportunity that she or he might not otherwise have, and what do we do to get there. Is Missoula a community, for example, I ask myself, and I'm going to ask you today, where we ought to figure out a way to make community college, that is Missoula College, free for all? Should that be an entry place? I think maybe it should be. How do we get there? Can we have a conversation about that? Can we unburden students of that debt? When I went to the University of Montana and got my degree in journalism over the course of about 15 years, give or take, it was a little shorter than that, but when I went to the University of Montana, it cost me all of, I think, $900 a year all in. I graduated from the University of Montana with a $500 student loan, which I intend to pay off, by the way. But the fact of the matter is that I had a leg up. I grew up in a lovely community with a couple of parents who had work and a commitment to the place. I went to a great school, a great public school. I went to a great public high school, and I went to a great public university. And by the time I got out, I had had a lot of help from a lot of folks, and I had an opportunity to live in the place that I loved for a long time and give back to that place. And everybody in our community ought to have that chance. And how do we get there? By being intentional, by looking at the ways that we fund, we think, and we help people think. We need to look at fundamental issues around all sorts of things, ranging from the easy potholes, which actually are sort of easy, right? You fill them, and they break, you fill them again. It's pretty easy, right? How about hunger, right? Not as easy, but we also don't get to give up on it. If a problem is intractable, it doesn't mean we step away from it. We figure out how to deal with it, and we're intentional, which is why last year we hired a housing director. So if you don't have a place to live, Your life isn't much. Your life is very, very complicated. So part of our job is to make sure that everyone has a place to live, because we believe that's a right. It is fundamental to being a human in our community to have a decent, safe place to live. And if you've got that, maybe you can start doing the next thing, right? Maybe you can get a job. Maybe you can get training. Maybe you can start helping in your community. Maybe with that fundamental building block, you get to move forward. So as we look down the road, we're going to be intentional. We're going to be intentional about housing, right? We hired a housing director. We're going to create policy around housing, and we're going to figure out ways to fund that housing and be intentional about it. Transportation, it's a big deal. For some people, getting around is almost impossible. So what do? You get intentional about it, and you take away barriers. One of those barriers, believe it or not, was $1 in a fare box on a bus. So you take it away. You spend $300,000 with partners to make sure that everybody can ride a bus, and guess what? Suddenly, a person whose week ended when their money ran out at a senior residence now gets to get out and do something. Somebody who didn't have a job because they couldn't get to their job now can, because a barrier is broken down and their life gets a little bit better. We're going to be intentional around looking at energy issues. How do we make sure that folks' homes are energy efficient? And if they're energy efficient, guess what? It's $100 a month less on a power bill. That $100 gets to go someplace like food, medicine, shoes, school, books, whatever it takes to make a life better. And we can be intentional about that. We can be intentional about all manner of things, ranging from housing to service to governance to the way we think about what we do here. Is refugee resettlement a Missoula problem or a national problem? I would argue it's a Missoula problem and a Missoula opportunity, right? What are the opportunities that are getting lost at the federal level and at the state level, frankly, that we have an opportunity to pick up? We are as close to government. We are as close to the notion of government. Government is we, right? Government is us, and we're as close to that as you can possibly be, so we get to make decisions about the way our community works, because we can be intentional in the ways we move forward. So, how much time do I have, Larry? None? Okay. All right, well, let me start the pothole slides, and we'll go from there. So, as we look forward to working together again with the University of Montana about being strategic and giving people a leg up and a hand up and an opportunity. We look forward to continuing our work with Missoula County to make sure that we have a great place to live. A great place to live is a great place to do business, a great place to raise a family, a great place to get an education, a great place to serve one another. We are a great place. We have the great good fortune of being a great place, and we have the great good fortune of having the opportunity to ensure that this is a great place for generations to come. And I will not answer any questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you to all three of our speakers. Oh my gosh, they gave us so much great stuff to chew on. I just want to say one thing. You heard a lot about strategic choices and listening to your community and how important that is. And I want to give you a really concrete example of that. So the mayor mentioned that the Missoulian recently rolled back or eliminated comments, which went over quite well, and it was I wish we'd done it a lot sooner. But we also made some other strategic choices recently that did not go over quite so well, and our community let us know. And so I want to tell you that listening is important. As a result of them letting us know, we're going to be rolling back some of those changes. And so don't ever doubt that your voices matter. And use the opportunity right now that's been given to you to talk to these three leaders of our community about what you just heard. So why don't you take, Larry, what do you think, 10 minutes?
I think if we get 10.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So let's take 10 minutes, talk amongst yourselves, come up with one question, and please make it a question and not a speech, because we don't, and just one, and because we want to get to everybody, but we also want to get you back to your day jobs. So with that, talk amongst yourselves. We have 2 people with microphones, so put your hand up and we will get a microphone over to you. And the questioning starts now. Keep the question to 30 seconds and we'll do the answers as fast as we can. We'll start over here.
How does each of you have addressed housing as an issue? Each of you has addressed housing from your perspective. How does the issue of affordable housing and the homeless affect each of your institutions?
Okay. Well, I look forward to, at Missoula County, we talk about affordable housing all the time, or the lack thereof, and also the city and county together have worked on the 10-year plan to end homelessness, which is a challenge. We look forward to the study that's happening this spring. So Missoula Economic Partnership, Missoula, the realtors are the ones that really brought it forward. The chamber, all of us are trying to figure out what does it mean when in housing, so we know what we have. I think the one thing that is puzzling to me, and I think is probably part of the solution, that but we need to figure out how to make that happen, is we have about 4,500 lots in the urban area, city and county, that have been approved. Probably most of them are on the fringe in the county, but not developed. Unfortunately, most of that land was purchased at a time when land was doggone high, which, you know, when you live in a place that people love to be, land is high, but it was, you know, before everything crashed. So figuring out how to take those approved subdivisions, help folks realize whether they even designed the right size lots or the right kind of subdivision, and you know, put that land to use is a challenge. I also look forward in working together with the city as because they now have a department focused on housing, figure out how to do that together.
Thank you for the question. A piece of housing, of course, the University of Montana, especially when it begins to grow again, creates demand and creates higher prices, of course, for everyone. So one of our tasks is to increasingly make our residence halls attractive so that students will stay there for the second year, not just the first year, and ideally into the third year. And we are looking at ways to do that so that as we grow, we can suppress demand in a way that will enable those who aren't eligible to live in our residence halls do so. Because I have the mic, I do want to say, both in that aspect and in so many aspects, the Excellence Fund of the University of Montana helps us support special initiatives relating to things like that and scholarships for students. And I just realized later I forgot to acknowledge all the private support, literally the private support we get toward initiatives such as that. So I wanted to thank all of you for that and the whole region.
Thank you. So, so housing is a function of both private and public efforts, I think. And Erin's job is a little bit daunting. I just asked her to fix housing. And so she has fiscal year 2018 to do that, and then we'll talk about the next goal. Exactly, right, yeah. So we talked about intentionality earlier. So there are two critical pieces missing for us around housing in the city of Missoula, and one is a plan. We don't have one. And B is how do we fund whatever that plan is. Housing is really a function of inventory, and we need housing, as my friends in the real estate community will tell me over and over, from soup to nuts. We need the stuff that costs a whole bunch of money and the stuff that is subsidized. and everything in between, and we need more of it, and we need more of it now. Our preference, our plans, our policies are all about growing our community inward and taking advantage of existing infrastructure to help lower the costs of housing initially, and then if we make some investment, some public investment in that housing, that makes a difference as well. If that housing is connected to transportation systems and other existing infrastructure, that helps a lot. And we need to look at the various demographics. We need to look at housing for folks whose hair is sort of my color and lighter. And for students, we've got about 400 beds tipping up on Front Street for students that will make a tremendous difference, I think, not only in the quality of life for those students and the attractiveness of the University of Montana. No offense, Sheila, residence halls, flip-flops, and shared bathrooms, a thing of the past. We're no longer communal, so we have suites. Okay, fantastic. But I think those models, and it also gives the University of Montana a chance to, again, they're looking very seriously at their model and trying to figure that out. And we are in this together. The more opportunities we provide for safe, affordable housing for students means the more single-family inventory, particularly around the university, becomes available. This becomes about, once again, supply and demand. And on a completely separate but significant note, homelessness itself, that intractable problem that we talk about, Commissioner Curtis is very interested in that. I guarantee you that there are homeless students at the University of Montana. We all serve a homeless population. One of the things that Aaron and others and I are engaging in is a trip to other communities to understand how they're dealing with what we call housing first. And that is, if you are living on the street, my police officers have but two options when they pick you up. If you're inebriated, you are going to go to the emergency room, where your situation is going to cost somebody $5,000 to $10,000 to $30,000, depending on the severity of your condition, or we're going to take you to the pokey. We're going to take you to the Missoula County Detention Center, where you likely don't belong, but because it's a roof and a place where you're going to be safe for a period of time, you'll go there. Neither one of those is the place you ought to be. Neither one of those makes any sense. So we're looking at another model where folks who are chronically inebriated or addicted have an opportunity to at least have access to treatment, and if treatment doesn't take, they have an opportunity to live with their disease in dignity in a way that ultimately costs the community less.
Somebody got a mic, grab this. I'll take that here.
Oh, okay. Over here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My question was what you are seeing in terms of 10 years in terms of growth in Missoula. That's a question for all of you, and how that impacts planning or lack thereof.
So Missoula grows 1.5% to 2% a year over year, day in, day out. We're actually pretty steady Eddie, and it's actually pretty measurable. However, investment has spiked. That is, investment in development has spiked over the course of the last couple of years. So, for example, last calendar year, 2016, we had a record year at Development Services. That's the permitting arm of the city of Missoula. About $250 million of new development. And as we look at development moving into the future, the development largely follows commercial corridors and opportunity. And the greatest opportunities today are a function of our redevelopment districts within the city of Missoula. It's really the economic development tool that municipalities in Montana have. Ellen Buchanan, who runs our redevelopment agency, is sitting over here. And is currently very worried that I'm going to commit some money to something right now, which often she's worried about the free college thing already. I just sense it. I'm feeling her eyes on this side of my head, and there's a certain heat associated with that. But those redevelopment districts, we're going to continue to see significant development there. The beauty of that is, Ed O'Brien and I were just talking about, well, it keeps costing more to live in Missoula. we will always have additional expenses. The question is, do we have additional revenues? And tax base is clearly one of those places where we find additional revenue. And what redevelopment districts do is create tax base. It's tax base that pays a dividend later, but we'll see it. So Front Street, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Front Street is the new Higgins Avenue or the old Front Street, depending on your perspective of history, right? So from the Riverfront Triangle to Missoula College, probably $500 or $600 million of investment is on the table over the course of the next 5 to 6 years. We're going to see a boom along that corridor. All of that commercial tax base goes into both redevelopment and then at the sunset of those districts back into the general fund, and that is a boon for the community. Development in Missoula is as clean and as relatively free of controversy as it's been in my experience in local government. We had a really old zoning code. The least sexy thing you can work on is a zoning code, but we did it, and so we got rid of a lot of unpredictability and a lot of neighborhood angst around that, and I think that's helped a lot. We're looking at a lot of redevelopment. We're looking at a lot of development of what either have been parking lots or holes in the ground, underused land, and taking advantage of that. So I think we're in a position where we can engage in sustained and sustainable growth. We can always improve. There are going to be bumps in the road, but it's Missoula. We're used to that. So, yeah.
I project that my successor and the follow-up to our strategic planning will recommend that the University of Montana grow from between 11 and 12,000 students back up to between 13 and 14,000 students, and at that point pause and make sure that we are well prepared with our infrastructure and our ability to synchronize with the city and the county as to whether or not we can, with intentionality, grow to 14 to 16,000 or beyond. But I think that remains for future planning. I do want to ask, is the new or the old Front Street going to be the only two-way, one-way street in the world or the country, but you can't answer.
It depends on which way you're driving.
So I think the mayor answered well, like the percentage that we're growing. But I think the thing that we need to keep in mind is that one of the larger growing components of our population is our elderly folks, and I'm getting there really quick. We do need to. It's because we're a great place to retire. You can go to Arizona for a month if you want when it gets dark and gray, but we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to continue to support both ends of the spectrum. We need to be ready for the kids coming up. We need the ones in the middle that are going to college, but we can't forget the elderly, and that is a piece that often gets forgotten. My mom's in an assisted living right now, and I can tell you you're going to run out of money really quick. If you don't have long-term care insurance, get it, because it's expensive when you buy it as you get older. We are growing. We continue to grow. We are a great place to live. But the rural areas, too, are growing because of their proximity to Missoula. So we making sure that the infrastructure is there, too. Any trail we put up anywhere in this county is well-traveled, whether it be in Seeley Lake, whether it's out in Target Range, whether it's in Frenchtown, and there's a demand for them everywhere. So that infrastructure is an important part of growing.
We're curious, potholes aside, where would you really love to see the community get more engaged? What issue would you prefer that people get really passionate about?
Just one idea? I think being engaged in the not just on the sidelines about what are we going to do to help families that need help. So whether it be in that they're a victim of crime, but I think one that we keep hoping will go away and it doesn't is homelessness. I mean, if you're homeless, it means you need a house, and housing first is the right way to go forward, and we need to figure out how to help landlords so that they aren't afraid to rent to somebody that might not have that. How many of you could afford right now in your house that you own first and last month's rent plus the rent? I mean, it's just unreachable. So when you're down and out and you're living in your car, that means even more. And there are students at the university, there are kids in every one of our schools that really are, just because they're living on somebody's couch doesn't mean they don't qualify to be homeless. So homelessness.
For me, it would be engagement with faculty and especially students. And by engagement, I mean scholarships for students, Excellence Fund, and I especially mean flexible employment for students, internships for students, and engagement in the way that that Don and Pat Simmons, when they started the Ice Cream Social a number of years ago, to help create energy at events all around campus, because dedicated community members got engaged and helped us figure out how to supplement our own resources to make students feel completely welcome and as if there's no other place they would ever want to be than Missoula, Montana.
And excuse me, I think I'll use the broad umbrella of poverty, and I think that's where Commissioner Curtis was heading. Where it starts there. It's every social problem, every social ill begins with not enough. That level of scarcity in life that creates the need to make desperate decisions. And desperation doesn't serve a community very well.
Our question is for Mayor Engen. I'm glad you didn't duck out after all. We're going back to housing, and particularly ours is for a little more specific information about the Director of Housing and how much progress is being made. Recognizing that we have Homeward, Missoula Housing Authority, the POV, the various programs, is it all about financing? What specifically can you point to that gives us a sense of more than just, it's so much planning?
And before you answer that, President Stearns had to leave, so just a quick round of applause.
President Stearns leaving, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sheila. Hal Stearns, however, still here. Hal, come on up. You can speak for Sheila. It should be fine. Thank you, Ethel, for the questions. So first, our housing director is Erin Pahan. Erin is in the audience here today. She was hired a year-ish ago, right? Yeah, isn't that amazing? So planning is a piece of the puzzle. Other communities do things with regard to housing that make sense. They invest in buying down the cost of land, for example, which is one of the reasons that housing is expensive. They assist in buying down the cost of infrastructure. That's a sewer pipe, a water pipe, a sidewalk, a street light. Today, internet, a street. They make those clear, critical investments up front that help bring down the price of housing. And if it costs less going in, it costs less in perpetuity, generally speaking. They create mechanisms for long-term subsidy, or they create mechanisms for trusts wherein the housing, the equity in a house, there's a capped equity model in some cases for housing. And frankly, not all housing in Missoula today is going to be for ownership. I'm certainly a proponent of ownership. It's a way that I managed to build wealth, probably isn't the right turn of phrase, but a relatively comfortable life. Pardon me, and that's an opportunity that I want all sorts of people to have, but in some cases there are folks who just don't want to buy anything. In the wake of a really ugly recession, there are lots of young people who don't have much trust in the system, frankly. In some cases, we haven't provided our lenders enough education around some different models for ownership, so we need to do some work there. But again, if we can locate places where we can build with a degree of density, which helps buy down costs, where we can make public investment, which buys down costs, where we don't have to reinvent everything. That is, if we're not going out to Frenchtown to build a 500-unit subdivision, which may happen someday, but doesn't need to happen today in terms of affordability, because there are a lot of other consequences to that. So what Erin is doing is collecting data, for one thing. So she's picking up the stuff that we're getting from our partners at the Organization of Realtors and the Economic Partnership to understand, A, what the market is like, what folks want, what folks need, which may not necessarily always be the same thing, and what other communities are doing to make investments around those wants and needs. There's a lot that we can steal. There are other communities who are doing some of this work today, but we just haven't been in the game, and this is an opportunity for us to be in the game with some plans.
I think we run. Time's up. Sorry we didn't get to every table. Come back next week, and hey, you guys come back next week too. We'll continue. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming and thank our speakers and our moderator. Thank you, Kathy, for coming. And geez, hope to see you next week or month as well. Take care. And